a sprawling emirate where desert winds whispered ancient secrets, and the golden walls of the Sheikh Billionaire's palace shimmered against the relentless sun, a challenge had unsettled the heart of the most powerful man in the land. The Sheikh, famed not only for his immense wealth, but for his cold, razor-sharp intellect, had summoned 20 of the world's finest experts to solve an enigma that threatened to unravel his empire. Yet all had failed, their pride shattered before his unyielding gaze. Within the glittering walls of the palace, where crystal chandeliers scattered rainbows over marble floors, the air was thick with tension. The scent of oud hung heavy, mingling with the soft murmur of court intrigue and the distant howl of desert winds. This was a world of opulence and tradition, where loyalty was bought with gold, and secrets were the currency of survival. Seated on his ornate throne, the Sheikh's eyes burned with cold fire. His finely tailored robes rustled as he leaned forward, frustration etched deeply into the lines of his chiseled face. Each failed attempt by the illustrious experts had carved a new crease of displeasure across his forehead, and within him a torment brewed. The fear that this mystery might not bow before even his formidable mind. Yet behind his commanding presence, a hidden wound lingered, a personal torment the enigma symbolized, a puzzle not just of wealth or power, but of trust and legacy. Meanwhile, on the vast kitchens below, overlooked and underestimated, moved the poor maid. Her rough hands, marked by honest labor, carried a quiet strength. Her eyes, dark and thoughtful, betrayed a mind sharp as the Sheikh's own, hiding beneath the simplicity of her humble status. In a world that measured worth by status and bloodlines, she was invisible, and yet she possessed a rare spark that even the most brilliant minds could not kindle. The Sheikh had placed the challenge before his guests, a riddle born from ancient texts, laced with codes that could reshape his future. It had taunted the greatest minds, leaving them defeated and silent. But as the day waned, and the courtyard whispered with murmurs of failure, a soft voice rose from the shadows. The maid stepped forward, eyes steady and expressions calm, to gaze upon the puzzle that had eluded so many. A tense conversation ignited in the grand hall. The Sheikh, draped in his silks and finery, towered over her, his voice both commanding and skeptical. "You, a mere servant, claim to hold the answer that outlasted my experts?" His pride bristled like desert thorns. She met his challenge with quiet confidence, her humility a stark contrast to his overwhelming power. Then silence fell. Just 1 minute passed. Swiftly, with a steady hand, she unveiled a solution so elegant, so clear, it shattered the arrogance that reigned supreme. The court gasped. The Sheikh's icy demeanor cracked, disbelief swirling in his eyes. His world, the fortress he had built with unshakable control, was pierced by the unassuming wisdom of a poor maid. Shock rippled through the palace. The Sheikh's heart raced with a strange admixture of admiration and confusion. The rigidity of his pride faltered, and within the tempest of his emotions, a forbidden question took root. Could this maid, this unlikely savior, become the key to his redemption? Could she bridge the vast gulf between their worlds? As the desert moon rose high, the future shimmered with unexpected promise, and the Sheikh Billionaire found himself on the brink of a transformation that no wealth could buy. If you have been captivated by this unexpected twist and the sheer brilliance of the maid who defied all odds, subscribe to our channel, leave a like, and share your thoughts in the comments. What do you think the enigma was? How will the Sheikh Billionaire deal with his growing fascination for someone so far beyond his usual reach? The journey has only just begun. Be part of the story. The court remained suspended in stunned silence, the echoes of the maid's revelation settling like a gentle storm across the marble halls. The Sheikh Billionaire, once a fortress of invincibility, felt the fragile walls of his certainty tremble beneath the weight of her simple brilliance. His dark eyes, sharp as the desert night, bore into hers with something unfamiliar. Raw curiosity, mingled subtly with the first flickers of reluctant respect. The courtiers exchanged uneasy glances. Whispers fluttered like desert sands caught in a sudden gust. No one had imagined such humility could unravel the greatest enigma that had defied the empire's most brilliant minds. Yet here she stood, breath steady, unshaken by the grandeur that surrounded her. "Tell me," the sheik's voice cut through the thick air, "how did you arrive at this answer?" There was an edge there, still fierce, but tinged with intrigue. She met his gaze evenly. "I listened," she said simply, "not just to the words, but to the spaces between them. The riddle sings in silence, not noise. The answer was never meant for proud minds, but for those who hear with their hearts." A flicker of acknowledgement softened the sheik's features. No one had spoken to him in such a way in years, not since the betrayals that had scarred his soul and hardened his exterior. For a moment, the grand hall felt smaller, less formidable. The weight of centuries seemed to lighten, replaced by a fragile thread of connection between two worlds that should have never collided. "Why do you possess such wisdom when your place is among the shadows of this palace?" His tone was softer now, a whisper carrying layers of unspoken questions. She swallowed, her gaze dropping for a heartbeat before rising again with steady resolve. "Because strength is not measured in gold or titles, but in courage to speak the truth when others fear it." The sheik's lips twitched, half a smile, more a trace of something buried deep. "You underestimate the dangers you face. Loyalty here is a precious commodity, and trust is rarer than the desert's hidden oases." His voice dropped, low and warning. "There are those in this palace who would see you silenced before you disrupt the order." A spark ignited in her eyes, defiance tempered by wisdom. "Let them try. I am no threat to the empire's strength, only to the lies that weaken it." The sheik studied her, seeing beyond the dirt-smudged tunic and weary hands. He glimpsed the unyielding spirit that had quietly threaded itself through every silent moment of her service. The maid who swept corridors now stood as the unexpected challenger to his authority, and perhaps the only one who could hold the pieces to restore what had fractured. The guards cleared a path, and the advisors retreated, sensing a shift too profound to interrupt. Alone, the sheik and the maid faced each other beneath the vast, stained glass ceiling, where fractured sunlight danced like scattered jewels. "I will summon you again," he declared, voice heavy with meaning. "Not as a servant, but as an equal in this game of shadows. Together, we may yet unlock secrets that have haunted my bloodline for generations." Her heart caught in her throat. Never had she imagined that a Sheikh Billionaire, so distant and unyielding, would offer such an uncertain alliance. Yet, beneath his commanding presence, she could feel the tremors of loneliness and doubt. As she nodded, a faint breeze stirred the shimmering curtains. Outside, the desert night unfurled its cold, endless embrace. The palace seemed to hold its breath, poised on the edge of change. Later, in the quiet of her modest chamber tucked away beneath the palace's glittering heights, the maid allowed herself a rare moment of vulnerability. The weight of the day settled heavily on her shoulders. She had stepped beyond the invisible barriers of her world, but at what cost? Her fingers traced the edge of a faded locket nestled beneath her shirt. A gift from a mother, long lost to the harsh seas far beyond the emirate. The locket held a secret she guarded fiercely, one that no puzzle, no riddle could reveal. It was her shield and her curse. Back in the throne room, the sheik stood by, a window that overlooked the endless desert horizon. His reflection melded with the twilight sky, strong yet fractured. The enigma was solved, but the true mystery lay deeper. The strange force that this humble maid represented, a sudden tremor in the carefully constructed fortress of his heart. The court would speak of her brilliance for months, but only he sensed the storm brewing beneath the surface, the fragile thread weaving two souls together, in defiance of destiny's cruel games. And yet as the moon ascended, casting silver shadows over the palace sands, a darker secret stirred in the depths of the emirate's ancient vaults, one bound to the sheik's own bloodline, and to the fate of the woman who had dared to change his world forever. That secret waited patiently, its whisper more perilous than any riddle, ready to shatter everything the sheik believed he controlled. The first light of dawn filtered through the tall stained glass windows, casting kaleidoscopes of color upon the cool marble floor of the throne room. Yet the room felt colder than the shadows it held, charged with the unspoken tension that lingered between the Sheikh Billionaire and the maid whose brilliance had pierced the fortress of his certainty. He stood motionless by the window, the vast desert stretching endlessly beneath the awakening sky. The sands, shifting and unforgiving, mirrored the turmoil swirling within him. Every grain seemed to whisper of secrets buried deep, secrets he barely dared confront. Behind him, the heavy silk curtains swayed softly, carrying with them the faint scent of jasmine and oud, the sense of his heritage, his power, and the endless expectations that weighed on his shoulders. His gaze, sharp, yet touched with unfamiliar vulnerability, drifted downward. The quiet footsteps echoed through the hall, hesitant, yet resolute. She emerged from the shadows, like a secret unmasked, the dust of her modest chamber still clinging faintly to her simple dress. There was an aura about her now, something that no longer belonged to a servant, but to someone who had crossed invisible boundaries. "You keep the Emirate's greatest secret in your eyes," he finally said, without turning. His voice was a low rumble, carefully measured but heavy with meaning. "And yet I know so little about you." Her dark eyes met his, unwavering. "Perhaps because the walls I guard are different," she replied, "less of gold and power, and more of truth and survival." He allowed himself a faint, almost imperceptible smile, and for a moment, the man behind the silk robes and jeweled rings softened. "I summoned the finest minds in the world to solve the enigma, but none dared to look where you did." Her lips pressed into a quiet line, shadows passing across her face. "They were blinded by pride. I listened to the silence beneath the noise. Sometimes the greatest truths hide where no one else will dare to seek." The weight of her words hung in the air like thick incense. The Sheikh's fingers clenched, a silent battle raging just beneath the surface. That riddle was not just an ancient puzzle. It was a symbol of legacy, betrayal, and a future uncertain. "Your courage is reckless," he said softly, turning to face her fully. "There are many who would see you broken for stepping into a world that does not forgive." She squared her shoulders. The tremor in her hands betrayed only for a fleeting second before iron will reclaimed its hold. Better to break than to live caged in silence. The room seemed to pulse with unspoken acknowledgments. Two worlds, forged in different soils of pain and power, stood on the brink of collision. Threat and hope dancing dangerously close. "Come," the Sheik commanded, voice steady but layered with challenge. "Tomorrow you will join the Council of Advisors." Her breath hitched, a mixture of disbelief and fear. "I am no scholar," she whispered. "Tonight, scholar or servant means nothing," he answered, a rare softness threading his declaration. "Tonight, we face a storm that threatens not just what I own, but who I am." Silence stretched between them, the fragile understanding settling like dust after a desert tempest. Later that night, the vast palace, with its endless corridors and glittering chandeliers, seemed more like a maze of shadows than ever before. The maid walked the halls with measured steps, her mind racing. Each flicker of light, each whisper of wind, felt charged with possibility and peril. In the solitude of her room, the faded locket resting against her chest felt heavier than ever. Its cool metal was a tether to a past she dared not reveal, a secret that had shaped her every silent moment. The mystery of her lineage was a hidden tempest, one that whispered dangerously close to the enigma the Sheik sought to unravel. Meanwhile, in the royal chambers, the Sheik sat draped in the velvet night, his thoughts a tempest of conflicting emotions. His empire, so carefully constructed, now felt fragile, its foundation tested not by enemies, but by an unexpected ally who challenged everything he believed. He recalled her words, "Strength is not measured in gold or titles, but in courage to speak the truth when others fear it." A sharp knock interrupted his reverie. The trusted emissary from the ancient vaults stood solemnly in the doorway, bearing news that iced the fire in the sheik's veins. "The message, my lord," the emissary said, voice heavy with urgency. "From the forbidden chambers below. Something has been disturbed, something long hidden." The sheik's eyes narrowed, the restless storm within him roiling to the surface. The truth he had avoided now clawed its way into the daylight, threatening to unravel more than just riddles and legacies. He rose, every muscle taut. "Prepare the guards. No one, not even the closest, may enter without my command." His gaze hardened as he stared once more into the vast desert beyond. The moon's silver light now revealed shadows dancing not just on the sand, but within the walls he thought impenetrable. In the heart of the emirate, beneath the wealth and power, a secret stirred, a dormant force bound by blood, mystery, and the fragile thread that connected the sheik and the maid. And as the night deepened, the Sheikh Billionaire knew the game had only just begun. Because hidden within the ancient vaults, long sealed from time and touch, a whisper rose, a voice colder than the desert night, promising that the truth they sought could save them or destroy them all. The dawn had hardly begun to caress the sprawling palace when the weight of the previous night's revelations still clung to every corner of the grand hall. The air was thick with anticipation, as if the very stones remembered the defiance that had unsettled the fortress of tradition. The Sheikh Billionaire stood motionless, his silhouette sharp against the tapestry of early light streaming through the stained glass, a living shadow caught between power and fragile vulnerability. The maid's footsteps echoed softly down the marble corridor. Each step a careful balance of determination and uncertainty. She was no longer just a servant under the watchful eyes of gilded chandeliers. She was a wave breaking against the walls of an empire built on centuries of unyielding customs. Passing the carved pillars, her gaze met the flicker of tapestry flames, the scent of jasmine, intertwined with faint whispers of oud curling through the air. She recited the silent mantra in her heart. This was no longer just a riddle to solve. It was a battle for trust, for respect, and for a place unseen beyond the glimmering gold. The Sheik's study awaited, a sanctum where decisions shaped destinies. As she entered, the vast room felt smaller, the distance between two worlds compressed into a fragile thread stretched taut with unspoken questions. He rose from behind his carved desk, the heavy silk of his robes brushing the marble floor like a storm gathering quietly, his eye by a vulnerability rarely exposed. "Tell me, what do you hear now?" She swallowed past the sudden tightening in her throat, choosing words that were soft but resolute. "Not just the puzzle, my lord. The truths hidden beneath, the fears veiled behind every secret, the shadows this palace refuses to name." Her gaze did not waver. A subtle shift passed through the Sheik's stern features, as though a long frozen statue had cracked just enough for warmth to seep through. "And does that fear frighten you?" "Fear is a companion, not a prison. I have learned that strength does not lie in power alone, but in the courage to face what others flee." Her voice held steady, unyielding. He moved closer, the scent of rich spices mingling with the iron tang of his quiet frustration. You stand. Alone in this world, a mere whisper against a tempest. Many in my court will see your voice as rebellion, your presence as an intrusion. Her eyelids flickered, shadowed by a distant pain. Then let the storm come. I am not so fragile as they believe. They were two opposites entwined. He, the ruler of golden empires, a man armored with pride and wrapped in silks. She, the unseen cornerstone of survival beneath it all, cloaked in dust and unseen strength. A sudden knock interrupted the fragile silence. A messenger with a sealed parchment, the emblem of the ancient vaults displayed boldly on the wax. The Sheikh's fingers trembled imperceptibly as he broke the seal. Eyes narrowing, he read the words that pulled at the very roots of his legacy. Something has been disturbed, the emissary whispered before, retreating respectfully. The maid's brows knit, sensing the delicate thread of fate tightening around them both. The sheik turned, the fire in his dark eyes rekindled with a cold flame. Prepare for midnight. We will descend beneath the palace, to the vaults untouched by time and men. Her breath caught. What lies there, my lord? Truths long buried, some better left alone, others necessary to confront if we are to survive. As twilight surrendered fully to night, the palace held its breath. Outside, the vast desert was an endless sea of shadows, silent witnesses to the turning tides within. Together, they moved through hidden passages lined with ancient script and relics of forgotten ages. The air grew cooler, laced with dust and the musk of secrets that had lain dormant for centuries. At the heart of the vault, a stone sarcophagus lay cracked open, revealing fragments of brittle parchment and a sealed box adorned with cryptic markings. The Sheikh's ancestors' legacy, inscribed in riddles and blood. The maid stepped forward, her fingers tracing the worn symbols as a sudden chill danced along her spine. Within the fragile echoes of the past, she glimpsed not only the weight of power, but the cost of silence. A cost that had shaped both their destinies long before they crossed paths. The Sheikh's voice broke the heavy quiet. The riddle was never just a puzzle. It is a warning and a test. Will you stand with me through what comes next? She met his gaze, the unspoken promise hanging between them, heavier than gold or jewels. I never chose this path, but I will walk it, whatever. Darkness waits. A soft sound echoed then, distant but unmistakable. A slow creak from a corridor sealed tight for centuries. The Sheikh's eyes sharpened, the guarding walls of his heart flinching in recognition that the true enigma was about to unravel, and what it revealed could bind them forever or shatter the fragile alliance they had begun to forge. Outside, the desert winds howled their ancient song, but inside, in the depths of the forgotten vaults, a shadow moved, silent and watchful, waiting to decide the fate of the Sheikh Billionaire and the maid who dared to rewrite his destiny. The torchlight flickered along the cold stone walls of the ancient vault, casting long shadows that danced like phantoms from a forgotten past. The heavy scent of dust and time settled thick in the air, as if the very stones whispered caution. The Sheikh Billionaire's hand rested firmly on the edge of the cracked sarcophagus, his dark eyes sharp and unblinking. Beside him, the maid's breath came steady but shallow, her fingers trembling only slightly as they traced the cryptic symbols etched into the sealed box. The fragile parchment fragments scattered around told of bloodlines tainted with betrayal, power wrested through sacrifice, and promises bound in silence. Each mark speaks of deception beyond these walls, the Sheik murmured, voice low but resolute. A legacy not just of wealth, but of blood debts that shadow every choice I've made. His gaze flickered toward her, searching. Can you see beyond the riddle, beyond the lies? She lifted her eyes, steady and unwavering under the weight of his scrutiny. Truth is hidden where fear silences voices. You built your empire on dominance, but true power grows from trust, not gold or secrets. He inhaled sharply, the sound sharp in the stillness. Trust, he repeated, almost bitter. A dangerous word in my world, one that has cost me dearly. A slow breeze, like a whisper from the desert air above, stirred the parchment. The maid's gaze dropped to the shattered parchment again, a wave of sorrow threading through her calm facade. There is more, she said, voice barely above a breath. The box holds a key, not to wealth, but to freedom from the chains of the past. A faint creak echoed suddenly from the dark far end of the vault. They froze, eyes meeting, a silent acknowledgement that the night still held many secrets. The Sheik's hand slid from the sarcophagus to the box, fingers curling around its edge with deliberate care. Open it, he commanded, voice taut with anticipation. The maid's hands were steady now, sliding the cover aside to reveal an ancient dagger unlike any weapon they had seen. Its blade shimmered faintly, engraved with words that seemed to pulse beneath the surface like a heartbeat caught in metal. The hilt was wrapped in leather, worn soft by centuries, yet it radiated an undeniable power. This belonged to your ancestors, the maid whispered, awe threading her tone. The very blood that flows through you is tethered to the sword's promise and its curse. Her eyes met his, dark pools of sincerity and warning. The Sheik's jaw tightened. A curse I have long ignored, hoping to bury beneath gold and steel. His fingers closed around the hilt, an electric thrill tingling up his arm. But it seems the past refuses to stay silent. Outside the sealed chamber, a distant sound shattered the fragile quiet, a hurried footstep echoing with urgency. The maid and the sheik exchanged a quick glance, the weight of 1,000 unspoken fears anchoring them to the moment. We are not alone, she whispered, voice barely audible. No, the sheik agreed, eyes narrowing toward the vault's shadowed entrance. Something stirs beyond these walls. Something older than the empire itself. The air thickened, charged with invisible tension, as heavy footsteps approached, a presence both familiar and threatening. The maid's hand subtly moved to tuck the dagger beneath her cloak, her heart hammering with the sting of impending danger. They come for the truth, she said, voice steady despite the storm within. But some truths are better left in darkness. No, the sheik declared, lifting his gaze, the fire in his eyes blazing brighter than ever. This time, the shadows will face the light. A muted growl echoed from behind the approaching steps, an unseen sentinel guarding secrets too perilous to reveal. The Sheikh's stance hardened, the weight of centuries settling upon his shoulders in a crushing wave. "Prepare yourself," he said quietly, turning toward the maid with a fierce intensity. "The fate of my house and yours hinges on the choices we make tonight. Allies and enemies blur beyond these walls. Trust will be our fiercest weapon or our deadliest weakness. And shadows." The whisper of ancient betrayals stirred anew, weaving through their thoughts like desert winds threatening a storm. And as the heavy stone doors creaked open, revealing figures cloaked in darkness, the Sheikh Billionaire and the Maid braced themselves. Their alliance had never been more fragile, nor more necessary, because the shadows that stepped forward did not merely seek answers. They hungered to claim the legacy buried beneath their feet, to rewrite the fate bound in blood and fire. And the dagger gleamed, a silent promise that the next move would decide whether that legacy would destroy them both, or forge a destiny unexpected and unbreakable. The heavy stone doors groaned shut behind them, the echo folding into the thick silence of the ancient vault. Darkness clung to the corners like a living entity, pressing close as the torchlight jittered, casting flickering shadows along the cold, worn stones. The air was heavy, not just with the centuries of dust and forgotten secrets, but with the weight of unspoken truths ready to crush fragile hearts. The Sheikh Billionaire's gaze remained fixed on the dagger lying in the maid's trembling hands. Its blade shimmered faintly in the torchlight, the intricate engravings pulsing like a heartbeat caught in cold steel. The leather-wrapped hilt seemed almost warm, alive with a quiet power that defied time. For a moment, the harsh lines of the Sheikh's face softened, as if a long-buried memory stirred beneath the surface of his calculated control. "Do you understand what this means?" he asked quietly, voice low and thick, with the gravity that clung to every word. She nodded, though her heart thundered fiercely beneath her ribs. "It is more than a weapon. It is a legacy, one that binds you, your bloodline, and this empire to secrets that cannot be ignored." The flicker of torchlight danced in her dark eyes as she looked up at him, resolute despite the tremor in her fingers. "And to break free from those chains, we must face what has been buried." A tense silence stretched between them, the cold breath of the past brushing their skin like whispers from the desert wind. The weight of centuries pressed on their shoulders, and she could almost feel the eyes of those who had come before, watching, judging, waiting. Suddenly, a far-off sound fractured the stillness, a distant shuffle echoing faintly down the endless hallways, followed by the hushed clang of steel. Both instinctively snapped to alert, eyes narrowing as unseen dangers crept closer within the ancient shadows. The Sheikh's expression darkened, his body coiling with a tension born of countless wars, both political and personal. He stepped forward, positioning himself protectively in front of the maid, his hand hovering near the hidden dagger beneath her cloak. "They have come to claim what we have touched," he murmured, shifting his gaze toward the approaching threat. Her breath caught, but she held her ground, the flame of defiance burning brighter than the fear beneath it. Let them. I refuse to falter, not when the truth is within reach. Their alliance, forged in the crucible of necessity and fragile trust, now faced its first true test. Neither was unarmed nor unprepared. Yet the question lingered in the charged air. Who else had been watching, waiting for this moment to unravel? Footsteps grew louder. The scent of oud and cold steel seeped under the heavy stones, and shapes began to materialize. Figures cloaked in darkness, faces obscured beneath heavy hoods, their movements purposeful and silent as predators closing in. The maid's heart pounded like a war drum, but she found calm in the sheik's unwavering presence beside her, a rare anchor in a world of shifting shadows. The sheik's voice was a low growl as he whispered, "Remember, trust is our greatest weapon and our deadliest weakness." Without warning, the nearest figure lunged forward, a razor-edged khanjar gleaming sickly in the torchlight. The sheik reacted with the fluid grace of a man who commanded armies. A swift parry, a flash of steel, a controlled force that sent the attacker sprawling into the rough stone wall. The clash ignited chaos. The maid, drawing, breath steady, despite the roar in her ears, reached beneath her cloak and gripped the ancient dagger, the weight solid, almost comforting, in her palm. Steel met steel. Shadows danced with firelight. The vault became a tempest of clashing wills and desperate survival. Amidst the turmoil, the sheik's eyes never left hers, silently demanding strength and trust. In that brutal dance of life and death, something fragile yet fierce kindled between them, an unspoken promise that this night would not be their end, but a beginning. The last attacker fell with a muted grunt, and silence settled abruptly once more. The sheik lowered his dagger slowly, breathing hard, his dark eyes gleaming with a mixture of triumph and a dawning realization that far greater battles lay ahead. He wiped the sweat from his brow, then reached for the fragile box that had concealed the dagger. "We have survived the first trial," he said, voice a gravelly whisper. "But the true reckoning lies within these secrets." His gaze sharpened. "The blood that runs through my veins holds both a crown and a curse. And now that curse has awoken." The maid looked to the shattered parchments, scattered at their feet, her mind racing through the fragments of riddles and warnings inked long ago. She felt the weight of her own secrets pressing beneath the surface. The faded locket, the hidden lineage whispered by the desert winds, the past she had buried with her mother. "This dagger," she said, voice trembling yet steady, "is not just a weapon. It is a key and a beacon. Whoever wields it will uncover what has been lost, and what is meant to be kept hidden." The Sheikh's gaze darkened further, his shadowed expression unreadable as the moonlight filtered in through the slits above, casting fractured patterns on their locked hands. From the depths of the vault, an eerie stillness stirred again, an old forgotten voice waking from its slumber. "Tonight," the Sheikh murmured, "the line between ally and adversary blurs, and the fate of this empire, and us both, will depend on whether we protect the light or let the shadows claim it. A sudden gust of icy wind rattled the ancient doors. Against the chill and silence, a soft, almost imperceptible whisper escaped from the darkness beyond the torchlight, rising like a warning. The maid's eyes flicked toward the source, and her breath froze. "Not all ghosts rest quietly," she said, voice barely audible. The Sheik's hand tightened on the dagger's hilt. Then from the darkness a cold voice echoed, clear, commanding, and soaked with menace. "You have awakened what should have slept forever. And now there is no turning back." The torchlight shuddered as figures stepped fully into view. Not enemies of flesh and blood, but shadows of a treacherous past, bound by blood, power, and ancient feud. The Sheikh Billionaire and the Maid stood side by side, the fragile thread that linked them now forged in fire. But as those shadows closed in, the dagger between them pulsed once more, a silent herald that the true enigma was far from solved. And beneath the unyielding desert moon, a dark secret stirred, promising to unravel everything the Sheik thought he controlled, and the woman who dared to unlock his heart. The flickering torchlight cast uneven shadows across their faces as the figures looming in the dark stepped forward, their identities slowly peeling away under the harsh glow. Cloaked shapes, severed from the light of the Emirate's grandeur, eyes blazing with whispered grievances, stepped into the cold circle of fate. The Sheikh Billionaire's jaw clenched, the pulse pounding violently at his temples. His hand tightened on the ancient dagger pressed beneath the maid's cloak, a tether between their fractured worlds, fragile yet fierce. The air was a familiar weight, thick with betrayal, old and raw, pressing into every fiber of his being. The maid's breath settled into a measured rhythm, the heat from the hilt warming her palm despite the chill surrounding them. Her eyes locked on one figure, a slender silhouette whose voice had once been trusted, now twisted with ambition and venom. A shadow from the past she had never dared speak of. "You've crossed into the forbidden," hissed the leader, the voice harsh as desert sand scraping stone. "No servant, no matter how clever, holds claim to what is buried here." A flicker of fire ignited behind the maid's steady gaze. "I stand not as a servant," she declared, voice unwavering, "but as the guardian of truths some wish buried forever." The Sheikh shifted, the familiar command resuming its place on his voice, cold and sure. "Enough. Those who seek to unravel my bloodline will find this dagger sharper than their ambition." Steel gleamed as the tension snapped like desert lightning. The dark figures drew weapons, slow and deliberate, the sharpness of their intent cutting through the vault's ancient silence. In an instant, movement shattered stillness. The Sheikh moved with the precision of a born ruler, swift, lethal, every strike a calculated echo of the battles carved into his legacy. His robes whispered against the stone, a storm contained within satin and silk. The maid, heart hammering with fierce resolve, mirrored his rhythm, gripping the dagger as a beacon of fragile hope. Blades clashed, sparks flew, each collision a pulse of desperate will. The air grew thick with the metallic scent of resolve and the cold bite of fear. The distant howling desert winds seemed to moan in sympathy, as if mourning lives and bonds shattered and reforged in this chamber of shadows. For a heartbeat, their eyes met, two souls bound by unspoken promises, by a precarious alliance seeping deeper than mere necessity. He a man forged in gold and solitude, she a woman woven from dust and daring. Together, they carved a fragile sanctuary against the gathering dark. The last adversary crumpled, the echo of heavy breathing filling the void the fight left. The torchlight steadied as silence reclaimed its dominion. Yet now, beneath the calm, a new storm loomed, unseen but deeply felt. The Sheikh's voice, hoarse but unwavering, broke the stillness. This is only the beginning. The dagger awakened more than old grudges tonight. What sleeps beneath these stones is stirring. The maid's eyes drifted toward the sealed box, the ancient carvings casting ghostly reflections on her sweat-slicked skin. The fragile parchment fragments whispered secrets. She could almost see dancing between the cracks. Deeper, she said quietly, the air trembling with the weight of her words. Together, they moved toward the sarcophagus, its broken lid revealing even darker mysteries. Forgotten faces, frozen in time. Promises sealed with blood long dried yet still clinging to the walls, like specters refusing rest. A sudden chill swept through the chamber, brushing past as if carrying invisible voices. Voices of those who had built this legacy, and those who had tried to bury it. The Sheikh's shoulders squared, resolve hardening like desert stone. "The past has claws," he muttered, "and it reaches deep into the roots of this land, and of my house." The maid's fingers trembled, barely perceptibly as she reached into the depths of the sarcophagus, retrieving a time-worn scroll sealed with wax cracked by age and sorrow. She broke the seal gently, unrolling the brittle parchment as if waking a slumbering beast. "The curse this dagger bears is not just of blood and betrayal," she whispered, voice trembling with a mixture of awe and fear. "It is tied to a vow made long before any of us walked these halls, a vow that demands sacrifice or the empire will crumble." The Sheikh's eyes darkened, the weight of countless sleepless nights pressing heavily across his stern features. Then the enigma was never just about wealth or power. It was a test of loyalty and survival. A low rumble echoed from the farthest corner of the vault, the unmistakable sound of gears turning, ancient mechanisms groaning beneath the pressure of secrets restless to breathe again. The walls seemed to shift imperceptibly, the shadows gathering like an unseen tide. "Beware," the maid breathed, stepping back as the floor beneath subtly vibrated. "This place guards things that hunger for the light." The Sheikh's gaze locked onto hers, fierce and raw. "Then we face whatever lies hidden, together." Before they could move, the flickering torchlight revealed a slender figure emerging from the darkness, a woman draped in midnight silk, her eyes bright with cruel intelligence and cold purpose. Her smile was a blade, sharper than any weapon they'd faced tonight. "You thought your little alliance would remain unchallenged?" she said, voice laced with venom. "But blood debts always demand payment, and I have come to collect." The maid's breath caught, the dagger suddenly feeling heavier, pulsing softly as if warning of the battle yet to come. The sheik stepped forward, shadows folding around him like armor. Then let her come. For every debt there is a reckoning. A sudden whisper, terrible and ice-cold, slid through the chamber like the desert's own breath. And some debts are eternal. The torchlight flickered, caught in a breathless silence, as the vault itself seemed to awaken. The ancient curse writhed unseen, ready to tear apart the fragile bond forged this night. The maid and the sheik stood shoulder to shoulder, staring into the darkness, knowing the true enigma was no mere puzzle to solve, but a living storm, threatening to undo everything they held dear. And beneath the relentless desert moon, a secret far older and more dangerous than either could imagine began to emerge, one that would force them to question not only their loyalties, but the very fate they were desperate to claim. The darkness in the ancient vault seemed to thicken, swallowing the flickering torchlight in greedy shadows. The air hung heavy, charged with secrets long buried and betrayals whispered through generations. The Sheikh Billionaire's breath was steady but weighted. His fingers curled tightly around the weathered hilt of the ancient dagger hidden beneath the maid's cloak. The pulse of its faint glow cast eerie patterns on their faces, two souls poised on the knife's edge between power and peril. Their eyes met, sparking a tenuous alliance forged not in comfort, but in necessity. Neither could deny the unspoken bond weaving between them, a fragile thread spun from mutual reliance and unyielding defiance. Around them, the walls of stone seemed alive, as if the ghosts enshrined in the sarcophagus whispered warnings that clawed at the edges of their resolve. "Stand ready." The Sheikh's voice sliced through the thick silence, cold yet laced with the brittle steel of command. His gaze flicked toward the encroaching figures stepping cautiously into the torch's meach, cloaked shadows whose intentions were as dark as the depths they emerged from. The maid's breath caught, but her posture remained unbroken. Her roughened hands tightened around the dagger's ancient leather grip, the weight of her own hidden legacy anchoring her. She no longer was the unseen servant swept by the palace winds. She was a storm taking shape. The first figure lunged, a blur of motion armed with a gleaming conjar. The clash was immediate, a violent symphony of steel ringing in the vaulted chamber. The sheik moved with the lethal grace of a man who had wielded power for decades. Every strike purposeful, every parry a statement of authority. The maid matched his tempo, her own movements, honed by necessity and fire. Each collision wove a narrative of desperation, no longer just a battle of blades, but a contest for survival and truths long suppressed. The echoes of combat reverberated off the ancient stones as more cloaked forms surged forward, their faces still hidden, but their fury unmasked. The lights danced wildly, casting their figures in jagged relief, spotlighting the sweat on brows, the grit in clenched jaws, and the fierce determination burning in dark eyes. Through the chaos, the Sheikh's voice cut low, guiding the maid with graveled urgency. "Trust me with your life. Let the dagger be your shield." She nodded, the tremor in her fingers quelled beneath the surge of adrenaline. With every deft movement, she felt the heavy legacy binding her to this moment, the blood debts painfully evident in every grain of the desert sand beyond these walls. An attacker came too close, and the maid spun, blade flashing in swift arcs that sang an ancient song of defiance. The dagger's edge traced the air like a promise, precise, unyielding, and fierce. The sheik intercepted another with a controlled sweep, forcing the assailant back against the cold stone with an intensity born of centuries of battles fought and won. Their movements grew in synchronicity, the unspoken harmony of two unlikely warriors, fighting side by side against shadows that threatened to consume them. For a heartbeat, fear dared to creep in, but it was snuffed beneath the fierce fire of necessity. Finally, the last intruder fell, silence snapping back like a wounded beast. The only sound was their ragged breaths and the distant whisper of desert winds that seemed to mourn from beyond the palace walls. The sheik lowered his dagger slowly, eyes alight with a new fire, equal parts triumph and dawning dread. This was only the opening act. What lies beneath this vault is awakening, and we are no longer merely solving riddles. We are facing the reckoning. The maid's glance drifted to the open sarcophagus, its cracked lid revealing brittle remnants of the past. The faded parchments and cryptic symbols bleeding history's burdens. Her fingers trembled lightly as she traced the ancient script, a silent prayer to the lost voices who had borne such pain. The curse bound to this dagger, it is more than blood and legend, she whispered. It demands a sacrifice none here have yet dared to give. It threatens the very foundation of all we claim to hold. His expression hardened. Then this enigma we sought to unravel was never about wealth or power alone. It is a test of loyalty, of survival, of who we are beneath the golden mask. A deep, ominous rumble vibrated through the vault, the old mechanisms groaning beneath the weight of secrets, no longer content to sleep. The stones shifted imperceptibly, shadows creeping closer, as if the darkness itself conspired against them. Beware what rises, she urged. This place feeds on light and truth, but it hungers too for destruction. He stepped forward, the layers of silk and gold folding like armor around him. Whatever waits, we face it not as master and servant, but as allies bound by a shared fate. Before either could move further, the torchlight flickered sharply, revealing a figure stepping from the veil of shadows, a woman draped in midnight silk, eyes gleaming with ruthless intent. Her smile was a cutting blade, sharper than any weapon. At her side, "You believe your fragile alliance will hold?" Her voice spat venom. "Blood debts are debts unpaid for a reason. I've come to collect what is owed." The weight of those words settled like a death knell in the vault's oppressive silence. The maid's hand instinctively shifted beneath her cloak, the ancient dagger thrumming with restless energy, as if warning of the battle to come. The sheik stepped forward, the shadows gathering around him like a living cloak. For every debt, there is a reckoning, and tonight that reckoning begins. A whisper, cold and dreadful as desert wind over bone, slithered through the chamber. And some debts are eternal. The torchlight wavered, the boundaries between past and present trembling. The vault itself seemed to exhale a dark breath, as if the ancient curse had stirred awake, ready to consume them all. The maid and the sheik stood side by side, hearts pounding beneath the weight of history and fate. The fragile bond they had forged tonight was all that stood between salvation and ruin. And beneath the cold gaze of the unrelenting desert moon, a secret deeper than any riddle unfolded. One that threatened not only their lives, but the shattered remnants of a legacy built on blood, betrayal, and a love that dared to defy the impossible. The ancient vault breathed around them, a silent witness to the unfolding reckoning. The torchlight flickered against the cold stone as the Sheikh Billionaire and the maid stood side by side, their breaths steady yet weighed by the gravity of what had been revealed, and what was still to come. The dark woman cloaked in midnight silk had vanished as quickly as she appeared, leaving behind only the lingering threat of blood debts yet to be settled. The dagger, still pulsing faintly in the maid's palm, was a tether that bound them to a legacy steeped in sacrifice, betrayal, and a promise that demanded fulfillment. Silence stretched briefly, heavy with the memory of battle and the echo of past sins. The Sheikh's eyes found hers, steady, unwavering, amid the shadows. The fragile alliance they had forged was no longer merely a necessity. It had become the heart of their combined strength. "We have laid bare the curse that haunted my bloodline," the Sheik whispered, his voice rough but resolute. "No longer shall it fester unseen in darkness." The maid nodded, her fingers tightening around the ancient hilt. "The truth must guide us now, not fear." His gaze softened, revealing a glimpse of the man beneath the empire's towering walls. "For too long, I ruled with cold certainty and iron will, but your courage, your wisdom has shown me that real power is forged in trust and truth." A faint smile brushed her lips, a light in the vast desert night. "And love," she added softly, her voice carrying the fragile hope both had denied themselves. As the first rays of dawn spilled over the horizon, the sprawling emirate transformed beneath a golden sky, its fierce sands softened by light, its great palace no longer a fortress of isolation, but a beacon of new beginnings. Back in the throne room, now touched by the gentle warmth of morning, the Sheik summoned his closest advisors and the court. The tale of the maid's brilliance and courage spread quickly, dissolving old prejudices like desert mist under sunlight. Voices that once whispered with suspicion now burst with admiration and respect. The empire, long bound by secrets and fear, opened its arms to a future shaped by unity and reconciliation. The sheik stood tall, his gaze calm but vibrant. He entrusted the maid with a new title, advisor and guardian of the Emirate's legacy, a symbol not only of her intellect, but of the transformation within him and their shared destiny. In the quiet that followed the assembly, the sheik and the maid found solace in a private garden blooming unexpectedly amidst the palace's marble grandeur. The air was thick with the scent of jasmine and blooming roses, their colors reflecting the delicate rebirth of trust and affection between two worlds once divided. "Do you regret stepping into the light?" he questioned gently. She looked up at him, eyes shimmering with an unspoken certainty. Never, for it's only by facing what frightens us that we find who we truly are. He reached for her hand, the warmth of his touch bridging centuries of separation. Together, we will weave a legacy, not of shadows, but of hope. Beyond the palace walls, the desert stretched endless, its silent wisdom echoing through the winds. The enigma that once threatened to undo the Sheik's empire had been unraveled, but more importantly, it had unveiled a truth far greater than riddles: the courage to change, to forgive, and to love without boundaries. And beneath the clear blue sky, the Sheik Billionaire and the Maid, no longer divided by station, but united by choice and heart, walked forward into a future luminous with promise. The legacy of blood and betrayal was broken. In its place blossomed a new dawn, a testament to resilience, redemption, and an unbreakable bond that would endure for generations. The palace hummed softly with life, its grandeur now a home, not a prison, a place where secrets were no longer weapons, but the seeds of new beginnings. And as the sun climbed higher, casting light on the sands and souls alike, the sheik and his equal faced the world, not as master and servant, but as partners bound by love and the courage to change their fate. In the stillness that followed, there was peace at last, the hard-won, beautiful peace, born from the union of two hearts, brave enough to rewrite destiny's cruel design.